This is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime, and I'm passionate about helping women use their untapped skills, resources, and talents to create their ideal work and lifestyle, making a difference in their second half.
Well, hello. Fun to be back with you again. I have Greg with me today. This is like he handsome. Can you just see this if you're watching the video? This is really fun. So anyway, we are on a wonderful subject today. We're going to laugh a lot on this one, I think. But I'm going to remind you, as this is released, that the summit pre-orders are out, that you can find that on Amazon. And if you look at any of the articles I've written along with these podcasts, or even on my podcast page, you will find a direct link there, so you can go to check that book out. There are always little samples. So our subject today, fun subject, 5 things we did right raising kids. And boy, we had to think long and hard on this, didn't we?
I know. You think of so many things you did wrong, and you come up with 5 right ones.
I know. So, but it's a really fun one for us as well, because we really love our kids, love our family. We've always made them really a priority. I've made them a priority of my life, even through work, love my work as well. So, but we want to put a disclaimer out there that we are not the experts, and no way. And so we just, you see these little guys, and now all of ours are launched. They're making their own decisions. So we are at really a different stage of life. So anyway, we feel like, though, we were able to influence them in many ways. So
Yeah.
I'm going to just kind of name these 5 things. I'm going to let Greg expound. I'll expound, and we'll just kind of keep going on these 5 things. So number 1 is that we set boundaries. And I still remember when you came home with the book, My First 300 Babies. What a catchy title. So I said, what is this? And it basically talked about scheduling. And it was great.
Yeah. This gal had been a midwife for 300 babies, and was basically talking about how to get kids to sleep through the night, and just those formative first 3 months.
Right.
And she was talking about scheduling, and she was talking about the fact that scheduling is one of the most benevolent things you can do for a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that is they are in a new world, searching for trust, searching for things they can count on. And certainly their parents' smiling faces is one thing, but providing them a schedule and a sense that the world can make sense was what she was talking about. And it's something that we just came to see made sense for us.
Right.
And so one of the foundational values that I think we tried to provide is our parents could always count on us for love and a listening ear, that we'd always be there.
Yes.
And it goes all the way back to the nursing schedule and teaching them to sleep through the night, and that we'd be there in the morning. And it even applied to a sleep schedule.
Right.
They went to the bed at the same time every day. And one of the amazing things I remember laughing about is some of our friends would be over and go, do your children wind down? And we just laughed, because the 3 boys, they never wound down.
They never wound down.
No, if we waited for them to wound down, it was going to be the next day. So a schedule bailed us out. And what was remarkable was, even when they were like 9, 7, and 5, full of energy, when the time came to go to bed, they just shut it down, and literally within 5 minutes, they were all asleep.
Right.
And
really fast. Yeah.
It all had to do with, they just knew there was a schedule.
Yeah. And I have to put a disclaimer in here at one point, because with one of our sons, won't name him, but he just, boy, his little will was right in there. And Greg literally had to hold me down in bed. I wanted to keep getting up. Poor little guy, he's just crying. No, but it would seem like the first time I just kind of let him cry. After that, we were good. So it was just setting, but that was a hard one for me.
Yeah.
And especially with one of them, usually you'll have one of them like that.
What was interesting is that one grew up to challenge Debbie's will like every period of his life.
All the time. And we weren't going to say who it was. But
No, we don't need to say who it is. Let's leave it. It almost came out.
It did. I was going to say his profession right now, but I won't say
we don't have to. If they've watched enough of your podcast, they already know.
They already know who this is. So, and we talk about it a lot. We laugh about it with him, actually, so which is fun. Okay, so boundaries. And number 2, we had them participate in multiple activities, and this includes like sports and music. And
one of the things that I was a professional baseball player, so one of the things I noticed early on in my career is there was a lot of guys that were playing A-ball with me, and you could tell after taking 3 ground balls that they weren't going to be Major League Baseball players. We were all professionals.
Yeah.
So if you start backtracking, the number of kids that are ever going to grow up to be professional is just minute.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be careful of pushing kids too hard and raising expectations beyond anything they could possibly imagine.
Right.
And so one of the things that we kind of just kept an eye on is do we have any savants? Do we have somebody with extraordinary skill that could, run 10-second 100 meters when they were 7? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was no.
Right.
We had some very talented kids.
Yeah.
So what we decided to do was to make sure that they enjoyed activities.
Yes.
And we just didn't invest, overly in the, crazy kinds of things that go on when you're trying to, push your kid to get, a college scholarship and those kinds of things. So now that would be a different deal if you happen to have, one of those exceptional kids, and that's something you got to decide on. But for us, multiple activities. So they played football, baseball, basketball, a little bit of soccer. They all took piano. They all took horns. Deb read to them a lot. So that they were exposed to reading. You can't really give them a rounded life, though, if you pick a sport when they're 8 and you're gone every weekend. Just that worked for us.
Right.
And I think the core value there was giving them exposure to a lot of activities so that as an adult, they could have an option of things to do, and just so happens that one of them grew up to be a professional softball player.
Right. And he could have been professional in music. He was pursuing this. He was an amazing musician, and all of them, I came from being a professional musician for so many years, and all of them, we just made sure they had music right alongside, just because of the benefits in their spatial development and all of those areas that music does with coordination, different kind of coordination. It's wonderful. I wrote the book about this, Music for Kids, how great it is for kids just to have right along with their education. They weren't going to be, I just knew the top 1% of the 1% makes it in this field. And for him, he was extremely talented, but you got to do a lot of different things as a musician.
Well, he didn't have that drive that would push you over the top.
Yes, in that area. He had the talent, but not the drive. So it made a difference.
You can't give somebody drive. Debbie and I both had a natural drive to excel in our fields.
Right.
You can talk a lot about it, but and you can expose them, but unless they pick up and run with it, there's not a lot you can do.
Right.
And they'd be better off sooner than later figuring out that they can't be a professional musician and getting into a a career that they like, and
Right.
that way they can excel karaoke on Friday nights.
That, and really impress people too. I tell
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
really impress people. So, okay, so the boundaries and participation, multiple activities, and I mean, boy, just to put another little stamp on that, I've talked to so many who feel like, oh, my young child has so much talent, and I think they're going to really make it, and they're 5. And I'm thinking, ooh, I've seen so many of those kids, and they're put in all this private stuff, and they quit by the time they're 11 because they're burnt out already. Kind of, don't push too hard unless they are really pushing.
Yeah, because the reason they're burnt out is that they're not the ones pushing themselves.
Yeah, so that's really important. Provide it, but don't. Yeah, with that is really. I've seen this over and over. This is not just an isolated event.
Right.
Really talented kids too. They get burnt out. Number 3, family holiday celebrations. And we made this a priority. Actually, our parents really made this a priority as well, which was great. Greg's mom's birthday was on July 4th every year, and his grandmother, July 1st. So where we were every single July 4th. But it's kind of funny right now, recently, the boys even say, oh, I remember all of those times up at grandma's. It wasn't like we missed going to these huge celebrations, but we really made family a priority to not only honor our parents, but to build that sort of impact and bonding.
But we balanced that a little bit. It wasn't like we celebrated every birthday as if, it was the birth of Christ.
I know.
So birthdays were special but subdued.
Right.
But and the reason that's important is that I've seen a lot of families, carve out like 30 weekends a year between holidays, birthdays, cousins' birthdays, bar mitzvahs, or baptisms. You can overwhelm your kids with family obligations.
Yeah.
So finding some sort of balance, but making holidays special, expected, are things that add to that first value we were talking about, and that was scheduling.
Right.
Somehow you got to make family a priority, but not a burden.
Right.
So carving out Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter,
right.
4th of July,
right.
or maybe one other important holiday for your family.
Right.
Maybe it's mom's birthday.
Yeah.
So which would be a wise choice for a lot of families.
It's a very wise. Now the boys get away with that a little bit. I have a December 20th birthday for everyone.
So our family, it wasn't quite the same. I was just throwing that out as an idea.
I know, but I have always told the boys I was an angel. I was due on Christmas, a little angel that just came a couple days early. So. They laugh. Anyway,
One thing that was kind of neat, though, this Mother's Day, for the first time, they coordinated a Zoom call.
Yes.
So they all wished Deb Happy Mother's Day at the same time, even though they were all over the country.
Yes, it actually was on FaceTime. They called me. One of the boys says, oh, I'm going to call at 8:00 in the morning. And they're all different places across the country.
Yeah.
And I looked and I took a screenshot. I'll have to include that in the notes, the show notes. I always put out show notes with me. It meant, I've always told the boys, just a phone call, just a card. I don't need a huge amount of stuff. It meant so much to me because first of all, that they coordinated. It was like, really?
Yeah.
Boys?
Yeah.
And it was just really, really special. So that was a real gift for me.
Yeah,
that was really, really fun. Okay, so we are moving right along here. This is really fun. Now, number 4 is to find their bent. We already sort of looked on this, the multiple activities. But find their bent, that's that BENT, what they're naturally good at and where they gravitate to. So each of our boys were so very different. And I mean, they all play the instruments, and actually they were like first chairs. I mean, they were in these major groups, but we found that they each went a totally different path, which was interesting.
Bent is an Old Testament word describing a child's natural tendencies.
Right.
And once you get past the fact that your child is not going to be a professional musician or a professional athlete, don't give up. The next thing is to figure out what is it that they can excel at. And not all kids are going to be super scholars and need to go to Ivy League schools.
Right.
But, I think we give up a little bit on discovering stuff. Two of our kids are really extremely good at household projects and construction.
Yeah.
And they're learning and really becoming quite good. Who knows where that'll take them? And some of that comes from when they were teenagers. Our auto mechanic was nice enough to give them all part-time jobs. So they all worked for about 2 years as auto mechanics, just learning how to use a drill and getting familiar with electricity and just building confidence that they could take something apart and put it back together, which is, like 80% of the battle. And two of them have really taken that to the next degree. One of the reasons I explored that was just practical, so they wouldn't be afraid of taking stuff apart.
Right.
Another is I just kind of had a funny feeling that they might be pretty good at this.
Right.
And so again, we've talked about our kids before, but one of them got a degree at a junior college and went on to be a fireman.
Right.
And that fit him really well. And there was lots of talk, leading up to that. Another, though, was really good at being able to read and focus and remember, and he ended up growing up to be an attorney.
Yeah.
Another one just had the ability to sit and study things for hours in his room, and sure enough, he ended up being an IT specialist. So those are the kinds of things we're talking about in Bents, and it takes a little bit more work because society always wants to push us into music or athletics,
right,
or maybe get you on an AP track at high school.
Yeah,
but that leaves a lot of people falling through the cracks.
Right.
And our job as parents is to help them figure out what they could be really successful at and give them the opportunities to grow in those areas. And so that's what we did with this idea of Bent.
And each of them actually took one path and then they went another.
Yeah.
Because the attorney first, I can't even remember, it was some medical field, and he had gotten this full scholarship and went.
That's right. Bioengineering. I think
oh
was his first
my God.
major.
And but it was his first year away from home, and he just got so excited that he could download all the movies he wanted and everything. But the field it wasn't right for him either. And he had to decide for himself. We had him pegged that he could be a really good attorney, clear from when he was 2 years old. I wonder who that child was that I was talking about. But he could, because he was so verbal, and it was right and wrong for him, just right and wrong. Everything was black and white. Yeah. But he had to decide. All of a sudden, he was the one that all of a sudden, all of these books show up on our front door. We said, "What are these?" He had moved back home, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to study for the LSAT and in 3 months." I said, "What?" And sure enough, he did. He passed it. He got into the school of his choice that he could transfer to a top tier school. It had to be his decision. Yeah. So, and he had that minor in business at that
point. But when he figured it out, he had that. It gave him the energy to complete the task.
Exactly.
It wasn't our idea.
Right. And with each of them, we've gone through that, even with our youngest, that's the professional softball, but also IT, with those computer skills. So each one of them it was a little later in really developing that bent, but we had seen it at least.
Right.
So anyway, okay. So this actually leads to our fifth point, which is connected a little bit, but the importance of education to create a self-sustaining child. We have put a priority on education, and it could be trade school, it could be almost anything, but we wanted our kids to be an asset to society and to be able to be on their own, self-sustaining. And each of them at one point ended up, moving back home and back out. But we set boundaries there too. There were definite boundaries, but we put that importance on education, and it wasn't just push, push, push. But we always read. We always, insisted if they were going to be living at home, they were pursuing their education in school and working. So all of those things, but that importance was there to create that.
Yeah, and I think this is an important message because some people put an emphasis on education merely to get a job. Mm-hmm. And education is more about helping them succeed at the first thing in life. Mm-hmm. And Debbie and I've always believed that our biggest job as parents was to deliver 3 children as functioning adults that society didn't have to take care of. Mm-hmm. So if your children can, enter their early 20s capable of taking care of themselves, mm-hmm. and not being a drain on society, mm-hmm. you've succeeded in some ways.
Right.
And one of the things I remember thinking when I finished graduate school was, I memorized all these complicated ideas and mm-hmm. things, and now I'm done, and I've got a stack full of books, and I realized, I don't remember very much of any of this. Well, with that stack full of books, if there was a problem that came up, I knew where to go look to get an answer.
Right.
And that's what education does for you.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily make you smarter. It does equip you, though, to figure out how to get the answers for life.
Right.
So if you get a degree in computer science, mm-hmm. Computer science changes every 3 months.
Of course.
So your degree didn't do you much good other than to give you the tools to keep up with what's going on, right. and maybe even perhaps be one of those pioneers that is cutting the path for the rest of us.
Right.
So education doesn't end when you graduate.
Yeah.
But it does provide you the tools to continue to be able to compete in life.
Right.
And that is what you want to give your kids
right.
when you push them to finish their education.
Yes.
Is the tools to compete for the rest of their life.
That is a great phrase. That will be in the notes as well, by the way. And now I was told that when I was in graduate school as well, and this was before, I'm going to date myself, before the internet. So I was in the archives, way up in the archives and of the libraries, and I had to go to multiple libraries.
So you were in college in 1997?
How about that? No, but and multiple libraries of just being able to find the resources and
right.
to do the research. But what it did was it made me not afraid to do the research. And that's why I love writing some of these articles with extra sources. And I'm big on sources. People throw out numbers, they fill out data or facts, they pull up facts, but they're not really substantiated. And so I think it's really important for us as leaders, as educators, as presenters, podcast even, anything, speakers, which I am, is to present facts that actually have some data behind them and some help to people to where they can get true help. And part of your education and training your kids is just to help them find that joy of finding that, of the joy of opening
right.
a new book. Even a physical book. How about that? I love opening physical books. And it's surprising to me how many kids don't read. You've got to be able to read, but we put an importance on education. And growing up, my mom would constantly take us to the library. I loved it. I think I read every single fairy tale in that library, and I loved them. And it's probably why I do some of I just wrote an allegory, and it's kind of that little fairy tale sort of twist to it. And I've written a musical that has some twist to it like that. So it's kind of that love of that. But I did the same thing with our boys, took them in that stroller, and we walk over to the library. We lived to a close library at that point, but it was, we go to that library, and now you can find so many things, but it's almost too convenient.
Yeah.
So anyway, strong believer in that. So I don't want to touch on one more thing, and then we're going to review all 5 of these, but we talked about the quantity versus the quality time, and how important quantity time is to create quality time. Because some people say, oh, well, we have quality time. We schedule in our quality time. And so, but I think that's really an important thing to approach here, because the quantity time even happens in the car. It happens on those long vacations where you're sitting in the car and you're breaking up fights in the backseat. But all of those little memories that you are creating with that quantity time together. So, yeah.
I think one of the things we discovered is that life will suck as much as it can out of you as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And you, as long as you keep giving, it'll keep taking.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're raising kids, which is super important until they get to college,
Mm-hmm.
As teenagers, you need to be around, because they're making important decisions. They're
Mm-hmm.
creating important values. So as they're around, you got to be around.
Yes.
And one of the things that just came up over coffee, when our kids were in elementary school, was quality time can't be scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say this birthday party is going to be a memorable moment for them.
Right.
Because if you look back in your children's life, as we can now, the things that they remember aren't the birthday parties. It's interesting that they did remember some holidays,
right?
But it's a lot of random moments, playing baseball in the backyard, or something goofy that happened at a camping trip.
Yeah.
It's just impossible to schedule quality time. Quality time pops up in the midst of quantity time.
Right.
So, I'd consider raising a family a 20-year obligation.
Yeah.
Where your career is second to raising a family.
Right.
And, you do the best you can to get by, provide for all the means and things that you need. But your primary job is to deliver functioning adults to society.
Right, right.
And in order to do that, they need to be around you. They need to pick up your values. They need to pick up your sense of humor.
Yeah.
They need to pick up the way you handle stress.
Yeah.
They need to pick up your value of education.
Yeah.
And they need to develop cherished memories of the two of you.
Yeah.
And that just happens as you do life.
Right.
And the more life you do together, the more chance you'll have for quality moments.
Right, right. Really, really well said. And I mean, we've worked on our relationship so we can impact our kids as well. And so that's really important. I mean, we have other podcasts about that, by the way. So if you want to listen in on any of those. But yeah, just those memories happen. And we feel so fortunate. We have this good relationship with our kids. They are adults. And that's been a little transition for us as well, especially for me. I'll always be a mom. But boy, they do remind me that when I say something, I get this, Mom. Okay, they got it. They got it. They are adults. And but I'll always be a mom. And so, but it's really, we find such joy. They are all so very different. As they bring, spouses in, girlfriends, things change because now their attention is a little more divided, and we have to understand that. We have to give space to that. And that's so it's an adjustment still for us, but we are living our life and enjoying our life. So everything's not just around our kids, of course, but it has been very focused on them for those 20 some years.
Yeah.
And I continued to work. Greg, of course, continued to work. We both are professionals. But there was a priority there of how much travel I was going to do. Definitely, I did not do a lot of travel.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, this has been such a joy. So to review all 5, and that it was setting boundaries. That was number 1. Number 2, multiple activities, participation, as we say, not just for participation trophies, because they did excel, but giving them that well-rounded. And there are so many community things they can do there too. Number 3, family, holidays, and celebrations, just to make sure that was a part of it, including our own traditions that we set up. Number 4 was finding their bent, and what they're naturally good at. It's helping them discover it. I think that was a big deal. And then the importance of education. But all of this is that quantity time versus just the quality. So I hope you have, those of you who are listening or watching, there's always a YouTube with every podcast as well, and an article. Make sure I will put some extra links in here just for raising kids and all of that. I enjoy doing that. I can put some book resources if you're interested in going further. Some that I trust and that we have trusted through the years that are just kind of classic. Next week, make sure that you tune in. I am speaking about why a message of hope is important in our world today. Without hope, we've got to have hope. We just die. So I'm going to be talking about that next week because it's kind of related to my book that's coming out as well, The Summit. And it's very, hope is a big part of that message in her journey. So listen, subscribe, tell your friends, love reviews, of course. But I just love being with you all each week. It's such a pleasure. It's such a privilege. Thank you for joining me. You can always reach me on any of my websites. womenathalftime.com will go directly to where the podcast page is, and others. I've got a number of websites, but you can always find me. So thanks again for joining me and joining us today. Thanks, Greg, so much for being here with me today too. So, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Women at Halftime. Visit goalsforyourlife.com or womenathalftime.com for many more resources, downloads, and programs, or to get in touch with me. I'd love it if you leave me a review and tell your friends. So until next time, this is Deborah Johnson, signing off.